Alright, settle in now. Let the noise of your day begin to fade, let your breathing slow, and let your mind grow quiet. Tonight, we are going to drift back in time together, journeying through a thick London fog to a place of gas lamps and horse-drawn carriages. We're going to talk about Victorian social rules. Trust me when I say that the people of this era had some of the most fantastically bizarre ideas about proper behavior you could ever imagine, notions that will make your most awkward modern moments seem like a walk in the park. So let's leave the present behind for a little while. Let's head back to Victorian England, to a world governed by a rulebook that was never written down, but that everyone was expected to know by heart. Imagine this. Congratulations. You've just woken up, not in your own bed, but in London, sometime around the year 1850. Your consciousness returns to you slowly, like a ship emerging from a dense sea fog. The first thing you register is the cold. A deep, penetrating chill that seems to cling to the very air in the room. Your eyes flutter open, adjusting to a dim, gray light, and you find yourself not on the familiar, forgiving surface of a memory foam mattress, but within the rigid confines of a narrow iron bed frame. The mattress beneath you is stuffed with horsehair, a surface that feels both slightly prickly and unyieldingly lumpy against your body, a constant, subtle reminder that you are far from home. The room is truly, deeply chilly. The cozy fire that was crackling merrily in the hearth when you drifted off to sleep has died down to a faint, pulsating glow of embers. It's just enough light to cast long, dancing shadows from the furniture, transforming familiar shapes into looming, mysterious giants. You can just make out the silhouette of a bulky wardrobe, a silent sentinel in the corner, a washstand holding a ceramic basin and pitcher, their surfaces gleaming faintly in the gloom, and a dressing table adorned with a small, hazy mirror that seems to reflect more shadow than light. Your senses, now fully awake, begin to catalogue this new reality. From the world outside your window, you hear the distant, rhythmic clatter of iron-rimmed carriage wheels making their way over cobblestones, a sound as integral to this city as the beat of a heart. Somewhere down the street, a lone dog barks, a sharp, sudden sound that is quickly swallowed by the morning mist. And then there is the smell. The air smells of coal smoke. Always, perpetually, coal smoke in London. It's a scent that seems to have a physical presence, seeping in through every invisible crack, under every door, and through every window frame, painting the world in shades of gray and grit. Mingled with this ever-present industrial haze is a sharper, cleaner note, the faint, lingering scent of bergamot oil from the perfume bottle on your dressing table. It's a bright, citrusy smell that you've noticed everyone seems to be wearing these days, a small, fragrant rebellion against the city's smoky cloak. You shift slightly, feeling the sheets around you. They are cotton, not particularly soft, but they are crisp and, thankfully, clean. Your nightgown is made of heavy flannel, with a row of tiny buttons that fasten it right up to your chin. The thought drifts through your mind, a whisper from another world, how absurd it is that even in the privacy of your own slumber, your neck and wrists must be concealed. To be seen otherwise, you understand instinctively, would be utterly scandalous. On the small table beside your bed, you see a little bell. You reach for it, the cool metal a shock against your warm fingertips, and give it a tentative ring. The sound is clear and sharp in the quiet room. Almost immediately, as if summoned by magic, you hear the sound of footsteps ascending the stairs. Your maid, Mary, appears at the door, a phantom of efficiency. Despite the early hour, she is already fully dressed, her hair neatly pinned, her apron pristine. "Good morning, miss," she says, her voice soft as she executes a small, perfect curtsy. "Shall I draw the curtains?" Without waiting for your reply, she crosses the room with practiced ease and pulls back the heavy velvet drapes. Weak, grey London daylight floods the room, revealing the fine layer of soot that smears the windowpane, a testament to the countless chimneys relentlessly belching smoke into the sky. "What would you like to wear today, miss?" Mary asks, moving towards the colossal wardrobe. She opens its doors to reveal an astonishing array of dresses, each one more elaborate, more structured, more impossibly intricate than the last. And it is right here, in this moment, standing before a closet of complicated garments in the chilly morning light, that your crash course in Victorian social rules truly begins. Because what you wear today, how you speak, the way you walk, who you are permitted to talk to, and when you are permitted to talk to them, basically every single thing you do from this moment until you lay your head back on this lumpy pillow tonight, will be governed by one of the most complex, unwritten, and unforgiving social codes that humanity has ever devised. The Victorians, you see, were essentially playing life on expert mode. One wrong move, one misplaced word, one gesture held a second too long, and boom, social disgrace. "You have a morning call with Mrs. Hartley at 11 o'clock, Mary reminds you, her voice a calm anchor in this sea of rules. She selects a day dress in a deep, serious blue. "And then tea with your cousin Emily at 4. These morning calls," she explains, "are your first lesson. And it's a baffling one. Despite the name, they never, ever happen in the morning. They take place between 3 and 5 in the afternoon. It makes absolutely zero sense, you think, but you are warned that to call them afternoon calls would earn you looks of profound confusion, as if you just uttered a phrase in a foreign tongue. Are you ready, then? To step into this world where even time itself seems to follow its own peculiar set of rules? Where your entire day is a carefully choreographed performance, and your costume is the first, most critical choice you'll make? Let's begin the process, because the clock is already ticking." Mary holds it up. It doesn't look like an article of clothing so much as an instrument of engineering, a formidable contraption of starched coutil fabric and whalebone, threaded with long, menacing laces. Hoo boy! The corset, indeed. It is the very foundation upon which the silhouette of a respectable Victorian lady is built. You hold your breath, a reflexive action you're only dimly aware of, as Mary wraps it around your waist. The fabric is stiff and unyielding. She begins to pull the laces, her movements practiced and efficient, her face a mask of professional concentration. The initial pressure is a gentle hug, a mere suggestion of the compression to come. Tighter, you hear yourself say, the word coming out as a soft command. The voice sounds like yours, but it feels disconnected, as if spoken by the part of you that has already accepted the rules of this world. A distant memory, perhaps from a book you once read or a whisper you overheard, floats through your mind. A proper Victorian lady is supposed to have a waist so small that a gentleman can span it with his hands. It is the pinnacle of feminine delicacy, a visible symbol of her refinement and her fragility. It is an ideal, and ideals, you are learning, demand sacrifice. "Yes, miss," Mary says, her voice still placid. She gives the laces a firm, powerful yank. The effect is immediate and shocking. The air rushes from your lungs in a silent whoosh. You feel your ribs shift slightly, protesting as they are squeezed into a new, unnatural configuration. You try to take a deep breath, but you can't. Your lungs can only expand about halfway, leaving you with a constant, shallow panting that you must learn to conceal. This, you realize with a dizzying sense of absurdity, is fashion. It is the price of beauty, the cost of propriety. You are now encased, your torso locked in a rigid, fashionable cage that dictates how you breathe, how you move, and, as you will soon discover, how you eat. But the construction is far from over. Next come the petticoats. Mary gathers them from the wardrobe, great clouds of starched cotton and linen. The first one is tied around your newly minuscule waist. Then the second. Then the third. Each one adds another layer of bulk, another layer of weight, another rustling, whispering shield that further separates your body from the outside world. They are heavy and cumbersome, and with each additional layer, you feel less like a person and more like a carefully decorated object. And then comes the masterpiece of Victorian engineering, the crinoline. It is a marvel and a monster all at once, a cage-like structure made of flexible steel hoops, all connected by fabric tape. Mary holds it open, and you step carefully into its center. She fastens it at your waist, and suddenly, your lower half is encased in a massive, bell-shaped dome. It swings around you like a giant, swaying lampshade, creating an impassable barrier of personal space. You now occupy a territory nearly 6 feet in diameter, a walking declaration of your social status. You also, you realize, can no longer easily walk through a doorway, sit comfortably on a chair, or bend over to pick something up. The crinoline is a constant, physical manifestation of your constrained existence. Finally, the dress itself goes over it all. The deep blue wool is heavy and rich. Mary expertly guides it over the crinoline, the enormous skirt settling perfectly into its bell shape. The bodice is punishingly tight, it seems aligning with the rigid lines of the corset beneath, further enhancing the illusion of a tiny waist from which the massive skirt blooms. By the time the last button is fastened and the last hook is clasped, you feel as though you are wearing a suit of armor. You are carrying at least 15 pounds of clothing, a portable prison of fabric, steel, and whalebone. The transformation continues above the neck. Mary does your hair, her fingers quick and sure. She pulls it back severely from your face, scraping every strand away from your temples and forehead, and arranges it in a neat, tightly coiled bun at the nape of your neck. There can be no stray wisps, no romantic flyaways. Everything must be controlled, contained, and proper. The hairstyle feels as restrictive as the corset, another means of taming the natural and imposing order. Will you be wearing gloves or mittens today, miss? Mary asks, holding up both options as if the choice were a simple one. Gloves, you say without hesitation, the rule flashing in your mind like a commandment etched in stone. A proper Victorian lady never, ever, under any circumstances, shows her bare hands in public. Ever. Your hands, those expressive, useful parts of you, must remain mysteriously concealed at all times, hidden within a tight sheath of kid leather. It is another layer of artifice, another barrier between your true self and the world. As Mary gently helps you work your fingers into the tight-fitting gloves, another cardinal rule comes to mind: perfume. You remember that Queen Victoria herself has declared the heavy, musky perfumes of the previous era to be vulgar, a scent worn only by the morally questionable. So instead of dabbing scent onto your wrists, you take your lace-trimmed handkerchief. You apply a tiny, discreet drop of that lemon and bergamot oil, just enough to smell clean and fresh, but not so much as to suggest you are trying to seduce anyone with your scandalous, alluring scent. And there you have it. Fully dressed, fully armed. You are no longer the person who woke up in the chilly darkness. You are now a sculpture, a carefully constructed work of art designed to meet the exacting standards of society. Poised, controlled, elegant. Your waist is impossibly small, your skirt ridiculously wide. You can barely breathe, you can barely move, but you are proper. You are ready to make your entrance. You are ready for the day. Fully dressed, you make your way downstairs for breakfast. The journey itself is a minor feat of engineering. You must hold your enormous skirt with one hand to prevent it from catching on the banister, while your other hand lightly grips the polished wood for balance. Each step must be taken with deliberate care. The house is coming alive around you, humming with the quiet, efficient energy of domestic service. You see servants scurrying about their tasks, their movements swift and silent like ghosts in the morning gloom. They are dusting, sweeping, and polishing, their entire existence dedicated to maintaining the flawless facade of this household. In the unseen depths of the house, the cook has been awake since 5 o'clock, preparing the morning meal over a hot stove. You enter the dining room. It is a somber, imposing space. A long mahogany table, polished to a mirror-like shine, dominates the room. At the head of this formidable piece of furniture sits your father, already barricaded behind the morning newspaper. His face is entirely obscured by the broadsheet, a clear and unambiguous signal that he is not to be disturbed. At the opposite end of the table, a vast distance away, sits your mother. She is the queen of her domestic realm, and she is already at work, a small, portable writing desk open before her, her pen scratching rhythmically across a sheet of paper as she attends to her correspondence. This, you know, is the lifeblood of society, the invitations, the acceptances, the thank you notes, the delicate negotiations of the family's social calendar. Both of your parents are, of course, fully dressed, as if ready to receive the Queen herself at a moment's notice. The very idea of appearing at breakfast in anything resembling casual clothes would be unthinkable to a Victorian of their station. "Good morning," you say, your voice sounding small in the cavernous room as you take your designated seat. Your father lowers his newspaper just enough to reveal his eyes and the top of his head. He gives you a brief, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement, and then the paper barrier is raised once more. Your mother murmurs a distracted, "Good morning, dear," without looking up from her letter. There are no hugs. There are no kisses on the cheek. Public displays of affection, even between the closest of family members, are simply not the Victorian way. Emotions, like a lady's hands, are to be kept properly covered. Breakfast is a substantial, almost daunting affair. A parade of silver-domed platters is brought in by the footman. There are eggs, glistening strips of bacon, and even kidneys, a savory delicacy of the era. A rack of perfectly browned toast stands at attention, alongside a tureen of steaming porridge. Victorians eat a great deal at breakfast. It is their largest and most important meal of the day, fuel for the long hours ahead. A feast is laid before you, yet you can only pick at it. Your corset, that relentless inner tyrant, makes it impossible to take more than a few tiny, bird-like bites. Your stomach feels as though it has shrunk to the size of an apple, and every small morsel is a struggle. You chew slowly, deliberately, acutely aware that to eat with any sign of gusto would be considered unladylike. It is during this quiet, formal meal that the day's lessons in the unwritten rulebook of society continue. "Remember, Jane," your mother says, her eyes still fixed on the letter she is composing. Her voice is casual, but the instruction is ironclad. Mrs. Hartley's daughter, Charlotte, has just become engaged. You pause, your fork hovering over a piece of egg. "Be sure to congratulate her," your mother continues, "but do not ask any details about the wedding. That would be presumptuous." You nod, committing this new rule to memory. This is a perfect example of the invisible architecture that governs Victorian society. You are expected to acknowledge all important life events, engagements, births, deaths, with polite and appropriate phrases. However, you must never, ever appear too interested in them. To ask questions: when is the wedding? What is her fiancé like? Are you very excited? Would be to cross a critical line. It would imply a level of personal curiosity that is considered terribly vulgar. A lady's interest in the affairs of others must always be mild, detached, and impersonal. She observes, she acknowledges, but she does not pry. After the meal, which you have barely touched, you have a few hours to fill before your morning call in the afternoon. You cannot be seen to be idle. You retreat to the drawing room, the designated space for the ladies of the house. Idle hands are the devil's workshop, after all, and a proper Victorian lady is never, ever idle. Her time must be filled with suitably feminine pursuits, activities that are both decorative and virtuous. You decide to work on your needlepoint. You sit by the window, the weak London light falling upon the piece of linen stretched taut in a wooden hoop. You begin stitching a delicate pattern of flowers, your needle moving in and out of the fabric with a quiet, rhythmic precision. It is a calming, meditative task, one that requires focus and produces a tangible result of feminine accomplishment. It is the perfect activity for a young lady of quality, a silent testament to her patience, her artistry, and her diligent nature. You sit there, a perfect picture of demure domesticity, stitching your flowers, waiting for the clock to tell you it's time for the next performance. You sit by the window in the drawing room, diligently stitching a pattern of violets onto a piece of fine linen. Your needle rises and falls with a practiced, steady rhythm. This is the life of a young lady of leisure, a life of quiet accomplishment, of creating small, beautiful things to fill the long, structured hours of the day. After a while, your mother joins you. Having concluded her morning's correspondence, she settles into a wingback chair opposite you, taking up her own needlework, a far more complex tapestry of some grand biblical scene. The companionable silence is broken only by the soft snip of her scissors and the faint rustle of her silk dress. "I saw Mrs. Fairchild yesterday," she says, her voice a study in casualness. She doesn't look up from her work, her attention seemingly devoted to selecting the correct shade of blue thread. "But you know your mother." Her casualness is a finely honed tool, a way of introducing a topic of significance without giving it undue weight. You murmur a noncommittal "oh," and continue with your stitching, carefully outlining a purple petal. "Her son has returned from university," your mother adds, her voice still perfectly level. "Her son. Thomas Fairchild." The name drops into the quiet room like a stone into a still pond, sending silent ripples racing through you. You keep your eyes fixed on your stitching, your head bowed in concentration, but you cannot stop the sudden, frantic leap of your heart against your ribs. Your fingers, which a moment ago were so steady, now feel clumsy. The needle trembles, almost pricking your thumb. You pray that your mother does not notice the warmth that is suddenly creeping up your neck and into your cheeks. Your mind flashes back to a ballroom, glittering with chandeliers and filled with the scent of beeswax and wilting flowers. It was last season, just before he went away to Oxford. You had danced with him, a brief waltz that had somehow felt different from all the other dutiful turns you had taken around a dance floor. You remember his eyes. They were kind, a warm, intelligent brown, and they had met yours directly, without the bored or overly bold stares of other young men. And, most remarkably, he had not once stepped on your feet, a small miracle that immediately put him leagues ahead of most of the partners you had ever endured. He had asked you what you thought of the music, not just what you had been doing that week. He had listened to your answer. That, you recall, was the most astonishing thing of all. How nice, you say, and you are immensely proud of how calm and neutral your voice sounds. You have managed to drain it of all emotion, serving up the perfectly bland, polite response required. You tie off a thread, your hands moving with a precision you do not feel. Your mother, however, is not finished. She has set her hook, now she will see if there is a bite. She mentioned he asked after you, she continues, and this time, you can feel her eyes on you. It is a quick, assessing glance over the top of her spectacles, a mother's keen surveillance of her daughter's heart. You feel your cheeks grow warmer still, a traitorous blush you cannot suppress. But you maintain your composed expression, your focus locked on the tiny, intricate stitches of your needlepoint. Did he, you ask, your voice a delicate performance of mild, unconcerned surprise? That's very civil of him. Civil is the perfect word. It is polite, it is detached, it is everything your response should be. It acknowledges his gesture without attaching any personal significance to it. Your mother smiles, a small, knowing, and deeply satisfied little smile. She returns her attention to her tapestry, her test complete. You passed. Your restrained response was exactly what propriety demanded. To have shown any more interest, to have blushed and asked, really? What did he say, would have been a catastrophic failure of decorum. It would have marked you as improper, overly eager, and lacking in the essential feminine mystery that was so highly prized. You understand this instinctively. The game of Victorian courtship is a dizzying paradox, a contest built entirely around pretending you are not playing it. The heart may leap, the pulse may race, but the face must remain a serene and placid mask. The goal is to be pursued, and the surest way to frighten away your pursuer is to give any indication that you are happy to be caught. It is a game of subtle signals, of hidden meanings, of entire conversations held in a single, lingering glance or a carefully chosen, neutral word. As you sit there, stitching your violets, new, secret excitement hums beneath the surface of your outward calm. Thomas Fairchild is back in London. And he asked after you. It may mean nothing at all. It may be simple politeness. But in a world as tightly controlled as yours, a world where every gesture is freighted with meaning, it feels like it could mean everything. What do you think? Is this just a mother's wishful thinking, a strategic move in the great social game of advantageous marriages? Or has a real, genuine seed of romance just been planted in the quiet of this London drawing room? The only way to find out is to follow Jane into the next chapter of her rigidly scheduled day, a chapter titled, The Morning Call. At precisely 2:45 in the afternoon, you and your mother ascend the stairs once more to don the final layers of your public armor. You put on your bonnets, elaborate constructions of silk and ribbon that must be pinned securely into your tight hairstyle. You wrap yourselves in cloaks to guard against the city's damp chill. And, of course, you pull on a fresh pair of gloves. Then, your mother hands you a small, exquisite case of polished mother of pearl. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, are your visiting cards, little pieces of thick, creamy paper with your name, Miss Jane Wilson, printed on them in elegant, curling script. These cards, you are beginning to understand, are not just pieces of paper. They are your currency in the complex economy of social calls, they are your ambassadors, your official record, the very key that unlocks the doors of respectable society. You are heading out for your morning call with Mrs. Hartley. And here you encounter one of the most baffling and rigid rules of this new world. A morning call, your mother explains as you descend the stairs, never, ever takes place in the morning. To arrive at someone's home for a social visit before the hour of 3 in the afternoon would be a social blunder of catastrophic proportions. Morning calls, she clarifies, are strictly an afternoon affair, conducted between the hours of 3 and 5. The name is a relic of a bygone era, a quirk of language that has solidified into an unbreakable rule. To refer to it logically as an afternoon call, she warns, would instantly mark you as an outsider, someone who simply doesn't understand how things are done. It is your first great lesson in Victorian logic. It doesn't have to make sense, it just has to be followed. Mrs. Hartley lives just a few streets away, a distance you could cover in 5 minutes in your own time. But you are not in your own time. You must adopt the proper Victorian lady's pace. This means taking small, measured steps, keeping your back perfectly straight, and holding your eyes modestly downcast, as if the sight of the pavement is the most fascinating thing in the world. To walk too quickly would be unladylike, suggesting an unseemly haste or, even worse, that you are not accustomed to navigating the world in such restrictive clothing. Your enormous crinoline skirt swings with a life of its own as you walk, a great bell of fabric that you must constantly manage. It occasionally threatens to knock over small children who dart too close or to entangle the leash of a passing dog, requiring a subtle, graceful maneuver to avoid public catastrophe. People pass you on the street. The men, upon seeing you and your mother, raise their hands to tip their hats, a universal gesture of respect to ladies of quality. You, in turn, must acknowledge them with the slightest, most subtle nod of your head, your chin dipping no more than a fraction of an inch. You must never make direct eye contact with a stranger. A gentleman, you know, would never dare to speak to a lady to whom he has not been formally introduced by a mutual acquaintance. And a lady, most certainly, would never, ever speak to a strange gentleman. To do so would be to invite ruin upon her reputation. You arrive at the door of Mrs. Hartley's townhouse at precisely 3 o'clock. Punctuality, you are learning, is not just a virtue here, it is a crucial social signal. Being early is just as bad as being late. Arriving early might suggest that you don't have enough important engagements to properly fill your day, which would be terribly embarrassing. Arriving late is, of course, an unforgivable act of rudeness. The door is opened by a stern-faced butler in full livery. You and your mother hand him your visiting cards. He does not take them with his bare hands, that would be far too intimate. Instead, he presents a small silver tray, and you place the cards upon it. One from you, and one from your mother. He examines them for a moment, then nods and shows you into the drawing room where Mrs. Hartley and her newly engaged daughter, Charlotte, are waiting. Everyone curtsies. There are no hugs, no friendly kisses on the cheek, not even a handshake. Physical contact is kept to an absolute, almost comical, minimum. "How kind of you to call," Mrs. Hartley says, her voice smooth and practiced as she gestures for you to sit. You arrange yourself carefully on a small, delicate sofa, acutely mindful of your enormous skirt. Sitting gracefully in a crinoline is an art form in itself. You cannot simply sit back, you must perch right on the very edge of the seat, allowing the vast steel cage to billow out behind you. "We were so pleased to hear your happy news," your mother says, smiling warmly at Charlotte, who blushes in the appropriately modest fashion. "Thank you," Charlotte murmurs, her eyes correctly downcast towards the floor. "Mr. Edwards is very kind." And that's it. That is all the information you are going to get about Charlotte's engagement. You will not learn what her fiancé is like, when the wedding will be, how they met, or, most importantly, whether she is even remotely in love with him. To ask any of those questions would be prying, and as you now know, Victorians do not pry. The conversation immediately moves on to safer, more neutral territory. You discuss the weather, which is cloudy but, thankfully, not raining, a recent sermon at church, which was uplifting but, thankfully, not too long, and a musical performance you all attended, which was accomplished but, thankfully, not too showy. Everything is described in the most moderate, inoffensive terms possible. You quickly learn that strong opinions are considered vulgar, a luxury reserved for the lower classes. You keep one eye on the clock, and the other on your mother. After what seems like an eternity of pleasant, meaningless chatter, but is in fact exactly 15 minutes, your mother gives you an almost imperceptible nod. It's a tiny, barely noticeable movement, but it is your cue. The performance is over. You both stand up in perfect synchrony. "It was so lovely to see you," Mrs. Hartley says, also rising. More curtsies are exchanged, more bland pleasantries are murmured. And then, you are back out on the street, the butler closing the door firmly behind you. Your first morning call has been successfully completed. "That went well," your mother says with an air of satisfaction as you begin your slow, dignified walk home. "Charlotte looked well, didn't she?" "Very well," you agree, remembering that in the coded language of Victorian conversation, "well" is the highest praise one can possibly give. It is a word that contains everything and nothing, all at once. It is the perfect summary of the visit itself. Back at home, you and your mother have a light luncheon. It's a delicate meal of cold meats, bread, and a simple salad, but again, your appetite is curtailed by the unyielding pressure of your corset. Afterwards, you are expected to spend the afternoon improving your mind. You select a book from the parlor shelf, a dense volume on botany, filled with detailed sketches of ferns and mosses. Novels that stir the emotions, particularly those concerning romance or adventure, are considered potentially dangerous for the delicate sensibilities of young ladies. They might give you ideas, and independent ideas are not a desirable quality in a future wife. At 4 o'clock, the doorbell rings, announcing the arrival of your cousin Emily for tea. The ritual is similar to the morning call you endured earlier, but as Emily is family, the atmosphere is slightly less formal. The starched rigidity of the conversation softens just a fraction. Still, you maintain perfect posture, you still speak in measured tones about appropriate subjects, and you assiduously avoid anything that might be considered gossip, even though you can see in Emily's sparkling eyes that she is bursting with it. After she leaves, you have a few hours to fill before dinner. You retreat to the pianoforte and practice for exactly 1 hour, not a minute more or less. This is a crucial balancing act. It is enough time to maintain your skills and demonstrate your accomplishment, but not so much as to suggest that you harbor inappropriate ambitions of becoming a professional musician, a career path utterly unthinkable for a lady of your station. Dinner is at 7, a relatively informal family meal since you are not entertaining guests. Even so, you must change your entire outfit. You ascend the stairs to your room, where Mary helps you out of your blue day dress and into another gown, this one slightly fancier, perhaps with a bit of lace at the cuffs, but not as elaborate as a full evening gown. Victorians, you are learning, change clothes multiple times a day, with each outfit precisely calibrated to the specific social context of the hour. It is an exhausting and endless performance of sartorial propriety. It is the following morning, a day that begins just as the one before, that the real turning point arrives. You are once again in the drawing room, your needlepoint in hand, when Mary enters. She is holding a small silver tray, and on it rests a single, heavy, cream-colored envelope. It is addressed to your mother. Your mother takes it, her movements unhurried, but you see a flicker of keen interest in her eyes. She breaks the wax seal, a perfect F for Fairchild, and reads the contents. A small, satisfied smile touches her lips. It is an invitation, she announces, her voice laced with carefully controlled pleasure. Mr. and Mrs. Fairchild request the pleasure of our company for a formal dinner party. Yes. Those Fairchilds. Thomas will be there. Your heart gives a familiar lurch, but you simply nod, as if receiving such an invitation is the most ordinary thing in the world. But you both know it is not. This is not a casual tea. It is a formal dinner party. It is a signal, a clear indication from Mrs. Fairchild that your family is being considered, that you are being considered. The next few days pass in a blur of preparations. The dinner party requires your absolute finest appearance. On the evening of the event, the preparations begin in earnest. Mary runs a bath for you, adding a few precious drops of rose oil to the hot water. The bathroom itself is chilly, despite the small fire burning in the grate, and you bathe quickly, shivering as you step out onto the cold floor. Then, the true construction begins. Tonight requires full evening dress, the most formidable armor in a lady's arsenal. Your corset is laced even tighter than usual, cinching your waist to a breathtakingly small circumference. Your crinoline is wider, a more dramatic and imposing bell of steel and fabric. Your gown, laid out carefully on the bed, is a vision of pale blue silk with delicate lace trim at the collar and sleeves. But the most significant feature is the neckline. It is cut lower than your day dress, daringly so, designed to show your collarbones and the slightest hint of your shoulders. This, you understand, is the absolute maximum amount of skin that a respectable, unmarried woman can display without being considered fast or improper. Your hair is arranged in an elaborate style, a complex architecture of curls and braids, with small silk flowers pinned among the gleaming tresses. Mary then applies a light dusting of rice powder to your face, neck, and shoulders, giving you the fashionably pale complexion that is so admired. It signifies that you do not labor in the sun, that you are a creature of the indoors, a delicate flower. There is no rouge, however. Obvious makeup is the mark of actresses and women of questionable virtue, and you must look pure, natural, and effortlessly beautiful. You look beautiful, Miss, Mary says, stepping back to admire her work, her voice filled with genuine awe. You turn to the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back at you. You look exactly as a proper Victorian young lady should, poised, controlled, elegant, your waist impossibly small, your skirt ridiculously wide. Fashion is suffering, but fashion must be obeyed. As you prepare to go downstairs, your mother stops you, her expression serious. Remember, Jane, she says quietly. At dinner, you will be seated according to rank. Do not appear surprised by your placement, whatever it may be. She explains the complex battlefield of the Victorian dinner table. The most important male guest will be seated to the right of the hostess, Mrs. Fairchild. The most important female guest will be seated to the right of the host, Mr. Fairchild. Everyone else will be arranged around the table in descending order of their social importance. To be seated near the bottom of the table, far from the hosts, is a clear and public message about your status. Tonight, you are not just a guest, you are a candidate, and your placement at the table will be your first grade. Your father has arranged for a carriage to take you. It is a cold night, and to walk would be to risk ruining your carefully arranged appearance. Besides, arriving in a private carriage, rather than on foot or in a hired cab, is another subtle display of your family's prosperity. As you step inside, the carriage door closing with a solid thud, you take a deep, shallow breath. The battle awaits. Your father's carriage pulls up outside a large, imposing townhouse on one of London's most fashionable streets. Every single window is ablaze with light, casting a warm, golden promise onto the dark, misty street. It is a declaration of prosperity, a beacon of high society. A footman, immaculate in crisp livery, opens the carriage door and helps you step down onto the pavement. As you walk towards the front door, you can already hear the faint, cheerful murmur of conversation from within. You step across the threshold and are immediately enveloped in a wave of warmth and brightness. The contrast with the chilly, foggy night is stunning. The entrance hall is illuminated by gas lighting, the very latest in modern convenience. The light it casts is clearer and steadier than that of any oil lamp or candle, illuminating the polished marble floors and ornate plasterwork with a brilliant, unwavering glow. A maid, her movements silent and discreet, appears as if from nowhere to take your cloak, revealing your pale blue silk evening finery to the world. You feel a momentary sense of vulnerability as your outer layer of protection is removed. Then, the butler, a man of immense dignity and gravitas, strikes the floor with his staff to command attention. He announces your family in a loud, clear voice that rings through the hall. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, and Miss Jane Wilson. All heads in the adjoining drawing room turn in your direction. For a brief, terrifying moment, you are the absolute center of attention, a specimen under the collective microscope of London society. You feel a familiar heat rush to your cheeks, but you hold your head high, your expression serene and composed as you follow your parents into the room and make your curtsies to your hosts, Mr. and Mrs. Fairchild. And then you see him. Standing beside his mother, looking impossibly handsome and poised, is Thomas. He seems taller than you remember, his formal evening clothes, a perfectly tailored black coat and trousers, a starched white shirt, and a dazzlingly white cravat, emphasizing the broadness of his shoulders. As you rise from your curtsy, your eyes meet. He executes a perfect bow, a gesture of practiced elegance. It is not too deep, which would seem obsequious or overly eager, but it is not too shallow either, which would be disrespectful. It is, like him, perfectly balanced. Miss Wilson, he says, and you are struck by how much deeper his voice sounds than you recall. How pleasant to see you again. Mr. Fairchild, you reply, your own voice a carefully modulated symphony of polite warmth. I trust Oxford agrees with you. The smallest of smiles crosses his face, a fleeting warmth in his kind eyes. It does, thank you, he says. Though London has attractions that Oxford cannot claim. The line hangs in the air between you, shimmering with unspoken meaning. Is he flirting with you? It is so hard to tell with Victorian men. Their compliments are almost always buried beneath layers of propriety, indirect and ambiguous. But the way he is looking at you, with an intensity that seems to momentarily pierce his formal composure, makes your heart beat just a little faster. More guests arrive, and the drawing room steadily fills with the rustle of silk and the gentle, humming murmur of polite conversation. Everyone remains standing. To sit down before dinner is served would suggest an unseemly eagerness to eat, a sign of poor breeding that would be considered utterly vulgar. You scan the room, a sea of unfamiliar faces and elaborate gowns. Across the room, you notice Charlotte Hartley and her fiancé, Mr. Edwards. They are a perfect model of engaged decorum. They stand a respectable distance apart, their bodies never touching, their glances never lingering. To a casual observer, they might not even appear to be a couple, let alone one on the verge of marriage. Just as your feet begin to ache in your silk slippers, the butler appears at the doorway and announces in his stentorian voice, "Dinner is served." Now comes the most complex choreography of the evening, the procession into the dining room. This is where the social hierarchy, which has been subtly humming beneath the surface of the conversation, is made brilliantly, terrifyingly public. The host, Mr. Fairchild, offers his arm to the highest-ranking female guest, a duchess with a formidable tiara. The highest-ranking male guest, a portly earl, offers his arm to the hostess, Mrs. Fairchild. Everyone else then pairs off according to their precise status, forming a grand, snaking procession into the dining room. You find yourself paired with a pleasant but unremarkable middle-aged gentleman you've never met before. As you take his arm, you discreetly search for Thomas. You spot him escorting an elderly lady who has an elaborate turban of purple fabric wrapped around her head. It is a brief moment of disappointment, but you understand. He is performing his duty as the son of the host, attending to the older, more important guests first. As you walk towards the dining room, your mind races. Where will you be seated? Will it be above the salt or below the salt? The next few moments will determine your place in the social ecosystem of this entire evening. You brace yourself for the verdict. The dining room dazzles with a blinding combination of crystal, silver, and candlelight. A magnificent crystal chandelier hangs overhead, its myriad pendants fracturing the light from dozens of candles into 1,000 tiny rainbows. Down the center of the long, gleaming table, a forest of silver candelabras adds to the glow, their flames dancing and reflecting in the polished surfaces of the silver and the fine china. The entire table gleams and glitters, a river of light flowing through the room. You find your place card, a small piece of ivory card with your name written in a beautiful, flowing hand. With a silent prayer, you read your fate. You are seated about halfway down the table. A wave of quiet relief washes over you. You are not at the very bottom, a position of social oblivion, which is encouraging. But you are not near the top either, not seated close to the hosts in a position of high honor. Your placement is respectable, moderate, and safe. It is a sign of acceptance, but not yet of victory. You glance across the table and locate Thomas. He is on the opposite side, several seats away, engaged in polite conversation with the lady to his left. The distance feels vast, an impassable gulf of etiquette and mahogany. As you settle onto your chair, perching, as always, on the edge to accommodate your crinoline, you take in your own place setting. It is an intimidating, almost terrifying, array of utensils. There are forks of varying sizes, spoons for soup and dessert and things you cannot even identify, and a formidable lineup of knives. Each one has a specific purpose, a designated role in the culinary drama that is about to unfold. Could you navigate this glittering minefield? Use the wrong fork for the fish course, and you could become the subject of whispered gossip for weeks to come. It is yet another test, another performance of knowledge and grace. The first rule of the dinner table becomes immediately apparent. You are to primarily converse with the gentleman seated to your left and the gentleman seated to your right. To attempt to shout a conversation with someone across the table would be the height of poor manners. Your world, for the next 2 hours, has shrunk to the space occupied by you and your immediate neighbors. The gentleman to your right, the same middle-aged man who escorted you into dinner, turns to you with a pleasant smile. "I understand you're acquainted with my nephew, Miss Wilson," he says. "Charles Pembroke. I believe you danced at Lady Hamilton's ball last season." You search your memory, a Rolodex of stiff dance partners and stilted conversations. The name sparks a clear, and not entirely pleasant, recollection. "Mr. Pembroke. Yes, you did dance with him. He was a clumsy dancer who stepped on your feet 3 separate times, and he had talked, without pause or reprieve, exclusively about his new horse. However, the truth is not a currency that is welcome at a Victorian dinner party. Social harmony is the goal." "Yes, indeed," you say, your voice bright and pleasant as you deploy a small, necessary white lie in the service of politeness. "Mr. Pembroke is a most accomplished dancer." The gentleman beams, delighted at this praise for his nephew, and you feel a small, secret pang of guilt, which you quickly suppress. This is the art of conversation here, to be agreeable above all else. The dinner begins, progressing through a seemingly endless succession of courses. Silent, white-gloved footmen move with ghost-like efficiency, presenting and clearing dishes. There is soup, then fish, then a substantial meat course, followed by game, and finally, an elaborate dessert. Each course has its own set of serving rituals and its own specific set of utensils, which you watch your neighbors to use correctly before you dare to pick up your own. You carefully take the smallest possible bites, chewing quietly and daintily. A lady is never, ever seen to eat heartily. Even if you are starving, you must project an image of delicate, bird-like appetite, as if you subsist on air and polite conversation alone. The conversation around you flows like a slow, meandering river. It is carefully balanced, designed to be interesting but entirely inoffensive. Politics, religion, money, and anything remotely personal or emotional are strictly, absolutely avoided. To mention such a thing would be like firing a cannon in a library. Instead, the talk is of recent, respectable theatrical performances, new exhibitions at the Royal Academy, the endlessly fascinating topic of the English weather, and recent travels to acceptable, sanitized destinations like Italy or France. It is a symphony of safe, surface-level chatter. Amidst all this, you begin a silent conversation of your own. You feel a gaze on you from across the table, and you look up to see Thomas watching you. His expression is perfectly neutral, but his eyes hold a spark of warmth, a hint of connection. As soon as your eyes meet, he quickly looks away, back to the lady he is supposed to be entertaining. But a few moments later, it happens again. A brief, stolen glance. Another. It becomes a secret game, a silent dialogue unfolding across the glittering expanse of silver and crystal. You might raise an eyebrow slightly in response to a particularly dull story from your dinner partner, and across the way, you see the corner of Thomas's mouth twitch in a suppressed smile. He understands. In this world of rigid social rules, where every word is weighed and measured, this silent, stolen eye contact is electric. It is loaded with more meaning, more genuine communication, than all the polite, empty words being spoken around you. It is a promise, a secret alliance, a shared acknowledgement of the absurdity of the world you both inhabit. The dessert plates are cleared, the last crumbs of cake swept away. The formal meal is drawing to a close. You have survived. You used the correct forks, you made agreeable conversation, and you have established a silent, thrilling connection with Thomas Fairchild. But the evening's rituals are not over. In fact, the most peculiar and gendered ritual of the Victorian dinner party is just about to begin. After the dessert plates have been whisked away by the silent footmen, a subtle, almost invisible signal passes between the hostess and her highest-ranking female guest. Mrs. Fairchild catches the eye of the Duchess across the table and gives the barest of nods. The Duchess, in turn, gently places her napkin on the table and begins to rise. This is the signal. In a rustle of silk, satin, and taffeta, all the ladies at the table rise as one, a flock of beautifully plumed birds preparing for flight. You follow suit, carefully pushing your chair back and rising to your feet. The gentlemen all stand as well, a gesture of respect, as you and the other ladies file out of the dining room in the same order of precedence in which you entered. You are leaving the gentlemen to their port, their brandy, and their cigars. This is perhaps the most deeply ingrained and gendered ritual of the Victorian dinner party, a temporary but absolute segregation of the sexes. This practice, you understand, serves multiple purposes in their highly structured society. The official reason, the one that would be spoken of in polite company, is that it preserves the fiction that ladies are too pure and delicate to be exposed to the coarseness of men's conversation, their strong drink, and the vulgar smoke of their cigars. It allows the men a private space to discuss the weighty topics of the public sphere, business, finance, and politics, subjects deemed too complex and too rough for the feminine mind to comprehend. But there is another, far more practical and unspoken reason for this ritual. It gives the women a desperately needed chance to use the chamber pot. The sheer volume of fabric in your skirts, the rigid cage of the crinoline, and the suffocating grip of the corset make frequent or spontaneous trips to the necessary room a logistical nightmare. This scheduled, collective break is a moment of profound, albeit hidden, relief. It is a small pocket of practicality hidden within a mountain of formal artifice. You follow the procession of women back to the drawing room, the same room where you stood an hour ago. The atmosphere, however, has changed. With the men gone, the air feels different, somehow lighter. The women arrange themselves in comfortable conversational groups, their voices a little softer, their postures a little less rigid. Mrs. Fairchild, ever the masterful social architect, moves gracefully through the room, ensuring that conversation flows and that the correct people are seated together. You watch as she gently steers Charlotte Hartley and her future mother-in-law, Mrs. Edwards, to a small sofa, a clear and public sign of her approval for their upcoming marriage. You find a seat on a small settee, hoping to blend into the background, to simply observe for a while. But it is not to be. Mrs. Fairchild's keen eyes find you. She glides towards you, her silk gown whispering over the carpet. "Will you play for us, Miss Wilson?" she asks, her voice kind but firm as she gestures to the magnificent pianoforte in the corner of the room. And there it is. The dreaded request. Your heart sinks. This is the moment every accomplished young lady fears. It is an honor, a chance to display your talents, but it is also a terrifying test under the watchful eyes of a roomful of critics. The rules of this particular game are perilous. You cannot refuse, for that would be unspeakably rude and would imply that you have no accomplishments to share. But you also cannot appear too eager, for that would be showing off, a sign of vanity and poor breeding. You must walk the impossibly fine line between modest reluctance and graceful compliance. If you wish it, Mrs. Fairchild, you say, your voice a carefully constructed melody of demure modesty. Though I am sure there are more accomplished musicians present this evening. It is the perfect response, self-deprecating but obedient. Nonsense, Mrs. Fairchild says with a dismissive wave of her hand. We have all heard of your talent. The compliment, meant to be encouraging, only serves to heighten the pressure. You have no choice. You rise and make your way to the piano, your every movement observed. You sit, arranging your enormous skirt as best you can on the small, unforgiving bench. You have chosen your piece carefully, a sonata by Mozart. It is a work that is technically challenging enough to demonstrate your skill and the quality of your expensive musical education, but it is not so flamboyant or passionate as to seem showy or, heaven forbid, overly emotional. You place your hands on the cool ivory keys, take a silent, shallow breath, and begin to play. You focus on the music, on the precise, elegant cascade of notes. You keep your posture perfect, your back straight, your face composed in a serene, slight smile. You must not grimace during the difficult passages or sway with the rhythm of the music. To show such feeling would be considered a breach of emotional control, a sign of an undisciplined, overly romantic nature. Your performance must be not only auditory but visual, a display of technical prowess and unwavering composure. Your hands, hidden from the audience, are trembling slightly in your lap before you begin, but you force them into submission. A proper Victorian lady, you remind yourself, never, ever shows nervousness. When the final, delicate chord fades into silence, the room is quiet for a beat. Then, the ladies break into applause. It is not a wild or thunderous ovation, it is a polite, measured, and entirely appropriate expression of approval. You acknowledge their praise with a modest nod of your head, then rise and return to your seat, the performance complete. You feel a wave of relief so profound it almost makes you dizzy. You have passed the test. About half an hour after you and the other ladies left the dining room, the gentlemen rejoin you. Their arrival brings a distinct shift in the room's atmosphere. The air, which had been filled with the delicate scents of rosewater and tea, is now tinged with the masculine, earthy smell of cigar smoke that clings to their clothes. Some of the older men have a high color in their cheeks, a telltale sign of the port they have been enjoying. The quiet, feminine murmur of conversation is replaced by a more robust, blended hum as the two separate worlds of the evening merge back into one. The older, married men, their social duties for the night largely fulfilled, settle into comfortable armchairs, some continuing the conversations on business or politics they began in the dining room. But the younger, unmarried men know that their work has just begun. They are expected to circulate, to make conversation with the ladies, to be charming, attentive, and agreeable. It is a marketplace of manners, and they are both buyers and sellers. You are acutely aware of Thomas's entrance. You do not look at him directly, that would be far too obvious, but you track his progress out of the corner of your eye. You watch as he begins a slow, strategic dance across the room. He does not make a direct line for you. To do so would be a shockingly bold move, an overt declaration that would set tongues wagging. No, Thomas is far too skilled in the art of social navigation for such a clumsy maneuver. Instead, he begins a winding, seemingly casual path in your direction. He stops first to exchange a few pleasantries with an elderly aunt of his, listening patiently to her lengthy monologue. Then he moves on, pausing to speak with another young lady, a blonde in a rather garish yellow dress, complimenting her fan. Each interaction is a perfectly executed pause, a strategic delay designed to make his eventual arrival at your side seem like a happy accident rather than a calculated destination. The tension builds within you with every step he takes, a slow, delicious tightening in your chest. And then, finally, he is there, standing before you. "I enjoyed your performance, Miss Wilson," he says, his voice low and warm, "meant for you alone." Mozart, was it not? He has not just complimented you, he has demonstrated his knowledge, his cultured ear. "Yes," you reply, your own voice quiet and steady. "His sonata in C major. You play with great feeling," he says, and for a moment, his praise is so direct it almost startles you. But he adds, in the very next breath, but with appropriate restraint, "of course. This is the masterstroke." He acknowledges the passion he heard in your music but immediately validates the social necessity of your control. He is telling you that he sees both the woman and the performance, and he approves of both. It is the most intimate thing anyone has ever said to you. You smile slightly, a genuine warmth spreading through you. "Thank you, Mr. Fairchild. I understand you're studying the classics at Oxford." You deftly pivot the conversation away from yourself and your accomplishments, which is the proper, modest thing to do. And so begins the intricate, delicate dance that is the Victorian version of flirtation. It is a carefully controlled conversation about entirely impersonal topics, where the real meaning, the true connection, is hidden between the lines. You discuss books, but nothing too romantic, like the scandalous poetry of Lord Byron. You speak of music, but nothing too passionate, like the wild emotionality of Wagner. You touch upon art, but nothing too avant-garde or controversial. All the while, beneath this placid surface of cultural commentary, you are both furiously assessing each other. Is he intelligent? Is she well-read? Would his temperament suit mine? Would her character complement my own? He asks for your opinion on a recent exhibition of landscape paintings, and your thoughtful answer reveals your artistic sensibility. You ask him about his translation of a passage from the Aeneid, and his enthusiastic response reveals a mind that is both disciplined and passionate about his studies. You are so engrossed in this quiet waltz of words that you almost forget you are being watched. But then you happen to glance up and see Mrs. Fairchild looking at you both. There is a deeply satisfied, almost triumphant expression on her face. You realize with a jolt that you are not just having a conversation, you are part of a larger plan. Mothers, you understand, are the primary architects of Victorian matches. There is no doubt in your mind that Mrs. Fairchild invited your family tonight specifically to throw you and Thomas together, to see if a spark might ignite. After what seems like only a few minutes, but what your internal social clock tells you has been nearly half an hour, Thomas reluctantly begins to excuse himself. To stay any longer would be to show a marked, and therefore improper, preference. "I should speak with Miss Hartley," he says, his regret evident only in the slight tightening of his jaw. "I must offer my congratulations on her engagement. It is the perfect, unassailable excuse." "Of course," you reply, hiding your own disappointment behind a polite smile. "It was pleasant conversing with you, Mr. Fairchild." He bows slightly. "The pleasure was all mine, Miss Wilson." He holds your gaze for a fraction of a second longer than necessary, and then he is gone, moving away to perform his social duty. As soon as he has departed, your mother appears at your side, as if summoned by magic. "He seems quite attentive," she murmurs into your ear, her voice laced with approval. You feign a light, airy ignorance. Does he, you say, pretending you hadn't just spent the most exhilarating half-hour of your life. I hadn't noticed. Your mother isn't fooled for a second. She gives your arm a slight, warning squeeze. Don't appear too interested, Jane, she counsels, her voice a soft but firm command. Nothing scares away a potential suitor faster than an eager young lady. It is the final, essential rule of the game. The courtship waltz has been danced, but the performance must continue until the music stops. The evening continues with more music, some card games for the older guests, and the continuous, polite circulation of people around the room. Everyone is careful to speak to everyone else, no one stays in one conversation for too long. The appearance of social harmony is paramount. Then, at precisely 11 o'clock, the first guests, the highest-ranking ones, begin to make their departures. This is the signal that it is now acceptable for others to leave. Your father catches your mother's eye across the room, and she gives a slight, almost invisible nod. It is time to go. You make your farewells to the hosts, thanking them properly for their hospitality. Thomas is nearby as you say your goodbyes to his parents, and he bows to you one last time. Until we meet again, Miss Wilson, he says, and his voice is soft, but it holds a new note of confidence, of promise. Good evening, Mr. Fairchild, you reply, your own voice giving away nothing of the turbulent emotions swirling within you. Outside, in the welcome chill of the night, your carriage is waiting. As you settle into the seat beside your mother, you finally allow yourself a small, private sigh of relief. A successful evening, your father declares from the seat opposite, and this, from a man of so few words, is high praise indeed. Indeed, your mother agrees, a note of triumph in her voice. Mrs. Fairchild mentioned they're hosting a small musical evening next week. We are to receive an invitation. Your heart gives a familiar leap. Another opportunity to see Thomas, and so soon. The Fairchilds, it seems, are not wasting any time. The next few days pass in a haze of anticipation. And then, on a Tuesday morning, an unexpected package arrives for you. Mary brings it to your room on a silver tray. It is a small, neat box wrapped in plain brown paper. This just came for you, miss, she says, her eyes bright with a curiosity she is trying very hard to conceal. Delivered by the Fairchild's footman. Your hands tremble slightly as you take the box and unwrap it. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, is a small, handsomely bound volume of poetry, Mr. Tennyson's latest collection. A small, crisp card is tucked inside the cover. You pull it out and read the message, written in a strong, masculine hand. Miss Wilson, it says. I thought you might enjoy these verses. The one marked on page 43 reminded me of your playing. Respectfully, T. Fairchild. You quickly turn to page 43. There, a poem about the power of music is marked with a faint pencil line in the margin. One line has been delicately, almost invisibly, underlined. The heart of the listener is moved by the skilled hands of the player. Mary is watching your face, her expression a mixture of deference and undisguised interest. It's just a book of poetry, you say, your voice a little too casual, as if handsome young gentlemen send you secret messages in poetry books every day. From Mr. Fairchild. Very nice of him, miss, Mary says, a knowing look in her eyes. Servants, you are learning, always seem to know what is going on before anyone else. You hide the book away in your dressing table drawer. This gift is a significant and thrilling breach of Victorian propriety. Gifts between unmarried men and women are technically forbidden unless they are formally engaged. For Thomas to send you this book is a bold, deliberate step, a secret shared between the two of you. To acknowledge it publicly would be to break the rules outright, but here, in the privacy of your room, you press the book to your chest for just a moment, allowing yourself to feel the rush of excitement that a proper Victorian lady must never, ever show. Thomas Fairchild is no longer just being attentive. He is actively, unmistakably, courting you. The invitation to the musical evening arrives the next day, as promised. The evening itself is another performance, another test. You wear a new gown of pale green silk that your mother commissioned from the dressmaker, a clear investment in this budding relationship. The Fairchilds' drawing room is filled with guests, including, you note with a sinking heart, a rival young lady named Emma Parker, who has also, quite transparently, worn green. The competition, it seems, is fierce. You are, as expected, asked to play the piano. As you move towards the instrument, feeling the familiar wave of nervous anticipation, Thomas steps forward from his position by the fireplace. "May I turn pages for you, Miss Wilson?" he asks, his voice clear and audible to everyone nearby. The room falls quiet for a moment. This is a public declaration. Page-turning is an act of proximity, of intimacy. It places him right beside you at the piano, a position rarely allowed between unmarried people. It is a clear, unambiguous signal to everyone present of his marked attention to you. "Thank you, Mr. Fairchild," you say, your voice steady despite your racing heart. "That would be most helpful." You settle at the piano, acutely aware of him standing beside you. You can smell his cologne, a clean scent of sandalwood and citrus. As you begin to play, a lyrical piece by Mendelssohn, you feel his presence like a warm glow. He turns the pages at the exact right moments, his focus entirely on you and the music. Once, as he reaches for the page, his hand brushes yours. The contact is accidental, fleeting, lasting no more than a second, but you feel it like a jolt of electricity, a shocking, thrilling spark that you pray does not show on your composed face. When you finish, the applause is generous. But more importantly, as you rise, you see that Mrs. Fairchild is beaming, Mr. Fairchild is giving Thomas an approving nod, and Emma Parker looks as though she has just sucked on a lemon. The courtship dance has been performed, this time not with stolen glances, but in the full, public spotlight. As your family prepares to leave later that evening, gathering your cloaks and gloves in the entrance hall, Thomas approaches. He does not address you, but speaks directly to your father, his expression serious and respectful. "Mr. Wilson," he begins. "Might I call on you tomorrow afternoon? There is a matter I would like to discuss with you, if you are available." The air crackles with unspoken meaning. This is it. This is the moment. A matter to discuss with your father. This could only mean one thing in the world of Victorian courtship. He is asking for permission to pay formal addresses to you, the official step that must be taken before a proposal of marriage can be made. The game of hints and whispers is over. Your father, to his credit, maintains his dignity, though you can see the pleasure in his eyes. "We would be honored to receive you, Mr. Fairchild," he says. "Around 2 o'clock, perhaps." 2 o'clock would be perfect, sir," Thomas replies, a wave of palpable relief washing over his face. He turns to you then, and for a moment, his formal mask slips, revealing the genuine, hopeful emotion beneath. Until tomorrow, Miss Wilson. Until tomorrow, Mr. Fairchild, you reply, your calm exterior a masterful deception hiding the wild, joyous symphony erupting in your heart. The following day dawns bright and clear, a rare and precious gift in London's normally foggy winter. Perhaps even the weather approves of what is to come. You wake earlier than usual, a nervous, joyful energy humming beneath your skin, making sleep impossible. Mary helps you dress with extra care in a morning dress of pale blue, a color you remember Thomas once saying he admired. Mary arranges your hair in a style that is soft and becoming, while still appearing properly restrained. Everything today feels heightened, imbued with a shimmering significance. Downstairs, the atmosphere in the house is thick with unspoken anticipation. Your father, who usually leaves for his office in the city, is working from home this morning, an unusual occurrence that speaks volumes. He sits in his study, ostensibly reviewing papers, but you notice he is wearing his best waistcoat and has a fresh flower in his buttonhole. Lunch is a tense, almost silent affair. No one mentions Thomas's impending visit, but the subject hangs in the air between you, making ordinary conversation feel clumsy and difficult. Your mother discusses menu plans with the housekeeper. Your father reads his newspaper. You push food around your plate, your corseted stomach a tight knot of nerves, making it impossible to eat. At precisely 5 minutes to 2, you retreat to the drawing room with your mother. Victorian propriety dictates that you should appear calm and naturally occupied when Thomas arrives, not as if you have been waiting eagerly by the door for hours. You pick up your needlework, though your hands are too unsteady for the fine, intricate stitches. Your mother sits nearby, a book open in her lap, though you know she is not reading a single word. She is watching the clock. The clock on the mantelpiece strikes 2. As if on cue, the doorbell rings. You hear the butler's measured footsteps in the hall, followed by the murmur of voices. Then, you hear footsteps approaching, but they are not coming to the drawing room. They are heading to your father's study. The butler announces Thomas, and the study door closes behind them. This confirms it. He is here, at this very moment, to ask for your hand. Now comes the hardest part of all. Waiting. A proper Victorian lady does not hover outside doors. She does not press her ear to the keyhole. She does not eavesdrop on private conversations between gentlemen, no matter how desperately she wants to know what is being said. And so, you must sit quietly with your needlework, your hands trembling in your lap, and pretend that your entire future is not being decided just one room away. 10 minutes pass. They feel like an hour. 15. Your stitches grow more and more uneven. Your mother finally gives up the pretense of reading and simply watches the clock, her own composure beginning to fray. Finally, after what feels like a lifetime but is probably only 20 minutes, the study door opens. You hear your father's deep voice, then Thomas's. Footsteps approach the drawing room. Your father enters first, his expression calm and unreadable. Thomas follows, looking uncharacteristically nervous, his usual impeccable poise having deserted him. "My dear," your father says, addressing your mother. "Mr. Fairchild has something he wishes to discuss with Jane. Perhaps we might give them a few moments." Your mother raises an eyebrow. This is highly irregular. An unmarried couple is never, under any circumstances, to be left alone together. But your father gives her a slight, reassuring nod. This is a sign of his complete trust and approval. "We'll be just in the morning room," your mother says, standing. She gives Thomas a pointed look that clearly communicates, behave honorably, or you will face my wrath. And then, impossibly, miraculously, they are gone. You are alone with Thomas Fairchild. Well, not completely alone. The drawing room door has been left pointedly ajar, and you know your parents are within earshot. But this is the most privacy Victorian propriety will allow, and it feels as vast and empty as a desert. Thomas stands by the fireplace, looking more uncertain than you have ever seen him. His usual composed facade has slipped, revealing the genuine, vulnerable emotion beneath. "Miss Wilson," he begins, then stops, correcting himself. "Jane." The sound of your given name on his lips, for the very first time, is shockingly intimate. "I have just spoken with your father," he continues, his voice not entirely steady, "and I have received his blessing to address you formally. Your heart is pounding so loudly you are certain he must be able to hear it across the room. This is it. The moment every Victorian young lady is raised to anticipate." He takes a small step closer, though he still maintains a respectable distance. "From our first meeting," he says, his eyes locked on yours, "I have been struck by your intelligence, your grace, and your kind heart. These past weeks have only served to deepen my admiration, and my affection." He pauses, seeming to gather his courage. In this moment, he is not the perfect, polished Victorian gentleman, but simply a man, laying his heart as bare as the rules will allow. "What I am trying to say, rather poorly, I'm afraid, is that I hold you in the highest esteem and regard. Jane Wilson, would you do me the very great honor of accepting my hand in marriage?" The words hang in the air between you. You have been expecting this moment, preparing for it, but now that it is here, you find yourself genuinely overwhelmed. A proper lady must appear surprised, and you are. Not by the question, but by the raw sincerity with which it was asked. The vulnerable, hopeful look in Thomas's eyes touches you more deeply than any flowery, practiced speech ever could. "Mr. Fairchild," you begin, your voice a whisper. Then you, too, correct yourself. "Thomas. I am deeply honored by your proposal." You pause, not for dramatic effect, but because a wave of emotion has made it difficult to speak. This is not in the Victorian playbook. You are supposed to be composed and demure. But this moment feels too real for a performance. "Nothing," you finally manage, your voice soft but steady, "nothing would make me happier than to accept." Thomas's face transforms. The careful, polite reserve he maintains in public falls away completely, revealing a smile of such pure, unadulterated joy that it takes your breath away. "Jane," he says, and the way he says your name sounds like a caress. "You have made me the happiest of men." He takes a step forward as if to embrace you, then stops, remembering the rules, even now. He extends his hand. "May I?" he asks. You place your hand in his, and the simple touch of his skin against yours, a contact so chaste and simple, feels as shocking and intimate as a kiss. "I have brought something for you," he says, reaching into his waistcoat pocket. He produces a small velvet box. He opens it to reveal a ring. It is not a large, ostentatious diamond, but an exquisite, antique ring, a deep blue sapphire surrounded by a delicate halo of small diamonds, set in warm, yellow gold. "It was my grandmother's," he says softly. "It's lovely," you breathe as he gently slips it onto your finger. The cool weight of it on your hand feels strange, a tangible symbol of this new, unbreakable promise. The sound of returning footsteps breaks the spell. Your parents re-enter the room, their timing impeccable. Thomas immediately steps back to a respectable distance, though his eyes remain on you. "Well?" your father asks, looking from your face to Thomas's. "Miss Wilson has done me the great honor of accepting my proposal, sir," Thomas says, his formal composure restored. Your mother's face lights up with a genuine, unrestrained smile. "How wonderful," she exclaims. "We must have champagne to celebrate." The butler is summoned, champagne is poured, and toasts are made to the happy couple. Your engagement is announced, and the conversation quickly, practically, turns to dates and settlements. A wedding in 3 months is agreed upon, enough time for proper preparations, but not so long as to seem hesitant. That night, long after Thomas has gone, after bowing over your hand and holding it for a moment longer than strictly proper, you sit at your dressing table. You look at your reflection in the mirror, and at the sapphire ring gleaming on your finger. In the restrictive, rule-bound world of Victorian society, you have navigated the labyrinth and won the prize. Not just a suitable match, not just a financially secure future, but a partner you have come to genuinely respect and admire, a man whose kindness you have seen, and whose heart you now hold. You are engaged. Your future has begun. And as you drift off to sleep, you feel a sense of peace, a sense of rightness. The courtship is over. The adventure is about to begin.